Hypnotic age regression. Is it real? Is it fake? What does it feel like to a client? How do you do it? Should you do it? Can it spontaneously happen? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. So I got with me Mike Mandel, the wizard himself. And let's talk about age regression. So first of all, what the heck is age regression? If somebody's looking to learn hypnosis or they're already qualified as a hypnotherapist or something, how should they be thinking about this concept of hypnotic age regression?
Well, age regression is pretty classic. It really started to come out around the time of Dave Ellman.
Okay.
And the idea is that you're taking someone back to a memory that they experienced from the inside. They're not seeing it as external memory like we often do.
They're
feeling it. They're associated into it. There'll be emotions tied to it. And especially if they have some sort of traumatic event, it could be grief-inducing or pain-inducing. By taking them back to that event, we can clear up the past, as Tad James used to say,
right.
And then their present and their future get better as well.
Okay.
But the question is, are they really regressing? Well, they're not going back in time. They're not in a freaking time machine.
Yeah, we can't change time, so it's
we can
really
change the past, their perception.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about a perception of a past event. So getting them into so-called hypnotic age regression, I guess, like you described, it's about associating them into a past memory.
Yes.
Do they believe at that moment, if they're hypnotized, do they believe they're 5 years old again?
I don't think they're even thinking about it. They're just living that memory. And this is where you'll see abreaction. Abreaction is a discharge of stored negative emotion. They may cry, they may, freak out, but this is getting rid of the negative emotion. And I'm not telling you to just get out and do this. There's ways of doing it without causing them any distress. But that's the point, is to get rid of this locked up emotion so they feel better again.
Now, I like your answer, because I said, do they believe they're 5 years old or whatever the age? And you said, I don't even think they're thinking about it.
Right.
And that's interesting. They're just reacting in the moment. So you might ask someone, now we're not going to explain how to do this. We do have a whole YouTube playlist on age regression. It's free to watch. So if you regress someone, you might ask them, how old are you right now? I mean, then they're consciously thinking about it, right?
What's your age right now?
Right. Yeah. And they'll say 5. Now, if they say 5 and I'm 5, do they still do they believe they're 5?
No, it's how they feel.
Or it's how they feel. They know that they're still an adult and they're sitting in a chair experiencing hypnosis with you. There's a hidden observer.
Yeah.
But they will act as though they feel it, still knowing they're not actually 5.
They will feel it.
Yeah.
They'll act as though they're there. But they will feel it.
Right.
And that's what we're discharging with it. And this can happen spontaneously. I was working with a client once, and she regressed to being like a little kid. You could tell, because this is an ego state, a part of her personality that has become executive, has come to the surface, and she's acting like a little kid and didn't even know she was. She was even talking like a little kid.
Right.
And another example, I was playing backgammon against a woman once, and whenever I built this prime, locking her in, she'd get an extremely frustrated state. And one day I just said, how old do you feel right now? And she instantly said 9.
Isn't that interesting?
Instantly.
So, okay, let's break this down very briefly then, because there's no hypnosis formally happening.
No.
But we always talk about all hypnosis is self-hypnosis anyway. So this woman was obviously very much focused in on the situation that functioned as some sort of anchor to a past emotional state.
Fired an emotion.
Fired a childhood ego state. And then when you just asked about it,
instantly she said
it brought it to conscious awareness.
And it turned out that her brothers had been really physically abusive to her, locked her in cupboards where she felt locked in. And that's what was happening in the game when she was locked in the inner table and couldn't move.
Yes. So there you go. This idea, that was age regression right there in essentially a social conversational setting with no formal trance, which answers the question, does the person really think they're 9 or whatever the age she said was? No, they feel it, but they don't think they're 9 now.
They feel they're 9,
right?
But they behave as though they are 9.
Yes, they feel it, they behave it.
Yeah.
But they're not going to say, "Oh, I'm actually 9." They're not. They haven't lost their mind, people.
But we should mention too, Chris, the regression paradox, which is really cool. It's impossible, really, in theory, to age regress someone to being a little kid or whatever, because
they wouldn't have met you.
Yeah, they haven't met the hypnotist yet. So how can they even be in a trance?
Which is, exactly. So that's why the whole idea of it just feeling that way and then behaving that way, not believing it's actually true and that they've actually gone back in time, because that would be ridiculous.
You mentioned though the emotion emotions involved. And I think we're touching upon, that's something called the affect bridge, which goes back to Freud. One of the few things I think he gave us of value, but that's just me. The idea that when they feel a negative emotion, we put them in a trance and say, go back to the very first time you felt this. Right. That will regress them to the initial sensitizing event.
Right. And if you want to learn more about that, we do have a whole YouTube playlist on age regression, which Mike explains more on this. Now, I want to wrap up with just this one other thing. Normally, there is a classical way of doing age regression, the way you just described.
Right.
But there's a gentler approach that you came up with many years ago, and you called it, well, I think you called it the repressed memory protocol, although it doesn't necessarily have to be used with that.
We call it that, although I did not come up with it. This goes back to Lacron and Cheek and some of the other masters who come up with ways of getting to this. But instead of having them do it consciously, we trance them out and we get finger signals to find the memories that are run below the threshold of their conscious awareness. They may abreact a little bit, but they don't feel any tremendous pain or discomfort. We run this a few times and then we run it consciously and they'll remember it and all the garbage is gone.
That's awesome, because the obvious implication is the unconscious mind knows the memory, and if they unconsciously agree to run the memory below the level of conscious awareness, there won't be any conscious trauma or pain or anything like that.
They'll just give you signals that something's happening.
Yeah, and then I know at some point along the process, after you've done it sufficient times, you ask the person's unconscious if they'd be willing to let their conscious mind in on it.
Yeah, and if you've run it a few times, each time you've discharged a lot of the emotional charge. If you've done it 3 or 4 times, the unconscious will almost always agree. And now they'll run the memory, but they will remember it consciously, and they'll be able to explain it to you.
And that completely changes the way people feel about the past event, which essentially affects how they feel about it in the present. Right?
Yes.
So if they feel horrible about some past event, every time they think about it, it triggers some trauma response for them. If we resolve that, then it's just this thing that happened back then, but it's not affecting me anymore.
That's right. You'll get a visual kinesthetic dissociation. So they remember the event now, even though they had repressed it earlier. They'll remember the event, but there'll be no negative emotion. It'll just be data.
Fantastic. All right. So there you have it. That is how age regression works, what it feels like, what the client most likely believes or does not believe, and how it benefits them in terms of discharging the negative emotions behind past events. Usually that's how it's used. And if you're interested in learning more about hypnosis, you can join the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. You can find it right on our website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. You can start for $1. It is the absolute best online hypnosis training in the world. I guarantee it myself because I've seen what there is out there, and this is freaking awesome. The only thing better than that would be coming to our live hypnosis training in Toronto, but I realize that's a much bigger trip and a much bigger investment. So spend the $1, check it out for yourself, and see if you agree with me. Check it out, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Thanks once again, and good night.